So welcome back, and as I'd indicated earlier, we are going to focus this morning on some aspect of basic education and looking at the eradication of pit latrines in particular in our schools across the country. Now, according to the Department of Basic Education, great strides have been made in replacing pit latrines with appropriate sanitation facilities for schools around the country. Now, this comes after President Cyril Ramaphosa launched the Sanitation Appropriate for Education, or SAFE initiative, in 2018, and this was in order to accelerate the provision of sanitation facilities in the identified schools. In 2016, advocacy group Section 27 took the Department of Basic Education to court after the death of 5-year-old Michael Komape in 2014 when he fell into a pit toilet at his Limpopo primary school. In 2018, the Limpopo High Court handed down judgment in the case, ordering the Department of Basic Education to provide an implementation plan that would outline when and how the department would remove and replace pit toilets in schools. So to talk to us more about this, we're joined by Elijah Mhlanga, Department of Basic Education spokesperson. Mr. Mhlanga, good to speak to you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Sagina, good morning. Thank you so much for having us.
So getting straight into it, 27 years after democracy, and it really is a shame that we're still talking about the eradication of pit latrines in schools for various reasons that I'll park for the time being. But President Cyril Ramaphosa launched the Sanitation Appropriate for Education, the SAFE initiative in 2018, and we were told it was estimated to cost around 6.8 billion rand. But how much progress has the department made to eradicate those pit toilets since then?
Well, there was a slow start when the initiative was launched in 2018. Basically, the president's call was for public sector companies, for organizations, individuals, and other entities to come on board to assist in eradicating pit latrines in our schools and replace them with appropriate infrastructure for sanitation that is conducive and relevant to accommodating our learners and teachers in schools. That happened, but it also took some time for some of the monies that were pledged to come through. And the department itself had to go back and reprioritize funding to make sure that there's an acceleration in this regard. So we had a slow start, but when we're starting to pick up pace, early last year, then COVID happened, and then there was a pause. And then we had to continue when the economy was allowed to be active once again.
So let's go back to that point in 2018 when the SAFE initiative was launched. How many pit latrines were there in schools at that time, and how many do we have today?
Well, the work that was done by DBE together with provinces identified 3,898 schools that still had inappropriate infrastructure. But after the initiative launched by the president, we had to go back, sit down and say, how much work do we really have? We then conducted a further audit, and that number came down to 2,500 of those schools, and these were confirmed. In fact, DBE sent out teams to provinces to verify that the information that was given to it by provinces was indeed true and correct. That was found to be the case. So we worked on that basis. So 2.5 is our baseline as of 2018, and that's what we've been working on.
So how many schools with pit latrines or just unsafe toilets do we still have today, Mr. Mhlanga?
Well, right now we have 1,978 projects that are currently underway, which means half of the 2.5 is currently being replaced. And we have these projects at various stages of implementation in the different provinces. And we're monitoring these, and we hope that we will see them being handed over very soon, because in many instances the work has been done, in others still at foundation phase. But we are making good progress, so we believe that we should be able to complete all the work in the specified time, especially because now there's increased monitoring. The Director General, as we speak, is in the Eastern Cape, making sure that the implementing agents are doing the work that they're supposed to do to finish on time, to budget and to specifications.
Okay. Let's speak to this unambiguously if we can. So 2,500 was your baseline. Let's not talk to various stages of completion. Out of the 2,500, how many have actually been completed in the 3 years since the SAFE initiative was launched? How many are totally complete, and how many do we still have that need or is still in the process of being dealt with?
There's 130 which were done by our donors. We have different organizations that have donated this, and we have another 600 as well, which have been completed and are waiting for handover. So that's the progress, but the information changes every day, because every day some project somewhere is being completed, and we then wait for the certification by the built industry regulators to give us the certificate that indeed this particular structure can now be used. So I can give you a number today, but tomorrow it will be a different one.
So from your numbers, 1,770 odd, what is the reason, quite apart from the budgetary issues, as to why we haven't really made real significant inroads 27 years on to ensure that our children at least have dignity when they need to go and use a toilet to relieve themselves? What's the problem?
Yeah, well, maybe we need to agree whether we're talking 27 years or we're talking from 2018, because if you go back to 27 years, you'll find that some schools have also been closed, so for various reasons. So let's agree that if we are talking about the SAFE initiative, we are talking as of August 2018, because that's when the work was repackaged for an accelerated service delivery, so that we are able to track what we do and deliver as per the promise that was made. So in that regard, there are two things. The first one, I did say that COVID also put a pause on the work that we're doing. So that's the first thing. The second thing, we identified that the implementing agents had a lot of work to do. They were already overloaded with work from other projects. But when we gave them the work to do in this regard, we implored them to work with speed, because this matter is urgent. And that work is now being supplemented by the DG's monitoring since February this year of the work that implementing agents are doing. And we found that in some cases, the work that they said they had done had actually not been done. That's why the DG has to be on the ground literally every day. And in each day, we find that there is a challenge here, and he is able to unblock that and make sure that there's progress. So, and in fact, we've now even started implementing the penalty clause, because it wasn't there before. That's why there were delays, but now we've implemented the penalty clause that if you don't do what you're supposed to do at the specified time, then you'll be penalized for it. So that is what is ensuring the acceleration in terms of the service delivery in that regard. And just to explain to you why I took it back to 27 years, Mr. Mhlanga, is because it didn't have to take a SAFE initiative for the Department of Basic Education to think about the dignity of the children of South Africa. But be that as it may, if that is the point at which you want to start picking it up, we can work with that for now. But moving along with regard to that plan, the implementable plan to eradicate these pit latrines, what is the deadline on that? Yeah, you see, it must not be made to look like the department was doing nothing for 27 years. That's completely incorrect. We were in the normal course of business working to build new schools, which we handed over, as far back as 2010, 2011, for example, some of them, in terms of the ASIDI program. So it doesn't start with SAFE. But in your introduction, you said the president launched the SAFE initiative, and that's our focus area. That's why we're talking about it.
The president had to do that, Mr. Mhlanga, because it had to be done, because after the department had to be taken to court by civil society organization Section 27, just to come up with that framework for norms and standards with regard to infrastructure. All of this had to be almost forced on the department. And hence, this is what I'm talking about. The fact that it's being done, nobody is disputing. but we are disputing the fact that it could have been done more timeously. It should have been done a long time ago. Children did not have to die, and unfortunately they did. 4 children at least lost their lives because of unsafe toilets, Mr. Mhlanga.
No, you're correct. Children died and they didn't have to die, but the work was already being done. Also remember that things did not remain the same since 1994. There's been a huge explosion in terms of the population of learners in our schools. The planning that was there, in some cases, it's not that the toilets were not there. The toilets were there, but they were not enough because of the huge demand for spaces in the schools. So there was a need for us to expand that infrastructure. And while doing so, we also needed to build appropriate structures. But remember also that in some instances, there were huge backlogs. In fact, right across the country, there was a huge infrastructure backlog. And while you're dealing with that, you also had to deal with new problems. So that is what has been the case here, that it's always been a moving target. And one of the things, in fact, that we've identified in the sector is that where you are building brand new schools, you find that people are moving away from those schools, and you've already spent money. That's why if you look in the Eastern Cape, about 1,000 schools or so have been identified to be unused. And most of those schools are new schools. People have moved away to other places. And where people are moving to, there's going to be overcrowding, there's going to be a huge demand for resources. So those are some of the things that we've been dealing with. So it shouldn't look like the department was sitting waiting for the president to launch the initiative. At various stages, there have been different initiatives to innovate. As a new challenge emerges, you find a way to deal with it. And that's what we've been doing. So we have not been insisting on doing one thing, even when we see that it doesn't work. That's why we had to say, okay, the pace is not at it's not what we would like it to be. So what do we do now? Let's invite the private sector to come and help us to do the work that we need to do, because the challenge is bigger than the resources that we have, but it's also bigger than the capacity that we have. In some instances, in fact, many instances, there is no water in those places. Generally, there's no bulk infrastructure or reliable water supply. Then the private sector companies have said, we have technology that can help you to provide safe sanitation facilities that use less water or no water. And we welcome that. That's what we are doing now. In addition to us having to harvest rainwater to try and make sure that every facility that we put in place is appropriate and is of a dignified status conducive for our learners and teachers.
So, Mr. Mhlanga, how much has the department allocated in its budget for the 2020-2021 financial year towards the provisioning of adequate toilets at schools?
Well, it's not so much the money now. The money is there. It's with the implementing agents. So the budget now is not the issue. The issue is the delivery based on the budget that's available. I mean, we've got some 2 billion or so that has been allocated for now to be used. In fact, it's not even new money. It's just money that was always there in provinces that has now been repackaged to make sure that the work is done. And the focus now is monitoring. I mean, we've moved away from saying the money is the problem, because there were under expenditure patterns in certain areas, and now we're saying we can't have that. And by the way, the minister is monitoring this very closely herself. Every 4 days she gets a report on what is happening in terms of the delivery of school infrastructure. The DG is on the ground every hour, every day, also to monitor. So this matter is now a priority in the sector. It is discussed in every meeting because we want to know what is happening at provincial level in the different grants, in the different funding vehicles that are there for infrastructure delivery, to make sure that all our schools have appropriate infrastructure, not just toilets, but generally across the board.
Which makes the problem even more curious when it is not a budgetary constraint, because now you have a situation where advocacy groups have had to go back to court to ask, for example, the Limpopo Department of Basic Education to write a new plan to fix school toilets. So you speak about these contractors, things going awry there, but do you have any plans to actually make sure that you get contractors on the ground who can do the job, who will not give you the sort of problems that you say you've been encountering?
Well, let's talk about the court case for a minute. The court case, the information that's in the court case is all information outdated we looked at, I personally read the documents again 2 weeks ago when they went back to court, and we realized that actually they went back to court because not because the department is not delivering, because the department is delivering, but it was lack of information in terms of what the department has done thus far. And the plan that we've summarized in the media statement, which we also issued 2 weeks ago, actually made it very clear that there's a lot of progress and there's clarity in terms of what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and all of that. So the court case was based on information that has since been overtaken by events. But unfortunately, because you're in court, you need to work with what is in the court documents. But in terms of clear plans and infrastructure, every province is fully on board working with us. Contractors, yes, contracts are being terminated. In fact, that's the reason the DG is on the ground, to identify areas that are delaying the delivery of infrastructure. And where there are challenges, the DG says terminate or institute the penalty clause so that people do what it's supposed to do. Every Thursday morning, the DG is meeting with the CEOs. In fact, right now, the meeting is taking place, the CEOs of implementing agents, where we look at the work that is being done, because some of them were not even monitoring the work that their own organizations were doing. And now they're doing work. The CEOs themselves are going on the ground to see what is being done. Because we've also received false reports of schools that were completed when, in fact, they have not even begun construction. Now we've been able to identify those challenges. So we have our finger on the pulse. That's why we are now seeing an acceleration in terms of the delivery of appropriate sanitation facilities in the schools.
It would have been laudable had it not been basic, in fact, that people actually check on these things. To talk about schools being said to have been completed when construction hasn't even begun, that is just preposterous, that people are actually still in their jobs when these sort of things have happened under their watch. But again, story for another day. The minister, Angie Motshekga, she has promised that the pit toilets will be done away with by March 2022. Looking at the discussion we've just had, looking at the progress that is being made, the pace at which that progress is happening, are you confident, Mr. Mhlanga, that this will happen? We're talking about less than a year from now.
In the statement that the department issued, we said end of financial year 2022-2023 is not much next year. I think there was a misreading of what we said there. So we need to correct that first. But second, coming to your point, yes, we are confident that with the speed that we've adopted right now in terms of monitoring, stay on the ground and making sure that we implement the monitoring oversight function right across the provinces and bringing on board all the heads of school infrastructure in the different provinces, we should be able to meet those targets if things remain the same. Because remember, we also are dealing with a different issue here of COVID-19, which has disrupted the sector in a big way. We hope that we will not have to shut down the economy for reasons that are related to COVID. If not, we should be on course to deliver on that. The president has also added this function, this particular matter of the SAFE initiative in the minister's delivery agreement. So there's pressure right across the system, right across the sector to make sure that delivery takes place. So it's not something that we focus on in one day. Every day we're focusing on school infrastructure. It's become a huge priority, and we're not forced to do this. It's something that we identified ourselves when monitoring schools, that there's a lot of work that we need to do, but we need to do it faster, and we appreciate the contribution of our partners in the private sector, the individuals that write to us every day. Some come with us on site to make inputs that is helping us to move at a much faster pace to deliver the much-needed infrastructure in schools, particularly insofar as sanitation facilities are concerned.
And just finally, in June, the department's Director General, Matanzima Mweli, posted pictures on social media of what seemed like an incomplete building, but a seemingly complete building of school toilets without doors. And as you would know, he received quite a bit of backlash. And that prompted him to say that it was still a work in progress. So were those doors installed to give learners the dignity that they deserve?
Yeah, you see, from March this year, we have been sharing images of the progress of the building of toilets right across the system as monitored by the DG himself. And in the process of doing that, you share project at various stages. I mean, whether it's foundation, whether they're still digging the ground, whether it's halfway to the roof, whether there are windows or not, whether there are doors or not. And that's the danger, by the way, of showing work in progress, because people chose to misconstrue that image and thought that was a complete picture, even though there was still building equipment inside that particular structure, which clearly indicated that that structure was not complete. We did say that we were going to invite the public when that particular structure is handed over so that people can see how it looks like when completed. What was being shown there, what was showed yesterday, and what is going to be shown this morning as the DG is on the ground will show work at different stages of building, because we want to show that indeed there is progress. So that particular toilet, when completed, will put a complete picture, and people will see what it is that we are doing. And we'll continue to share these images because we want to demonstrate that we are serious about this as well, and that progress is actually taking place day and night, by the way. There are even shifts now that work at night to make sure that the work is done. We have shared those images of workers doing the work at night, where people are using all sorts of technology to make sure that they continue building even when there's no light. So that is the sign of commitment and dedication and urgency that the department is demonstrating, to show that indeed, to us, this is just not a one-day focus, but something that we work on every day.
Elijah Mhlanga, thanks so much for your time. Department of Basic Education spokesperson, talking to us about the work being done to eradicate pit toilets and unsafe toilets in schools in general.